Hello, thank you everybody for joining us today. We are very excited because our community call is going to focus on the role online forms are playing in Puerto Rico, led by Ayuda Legal de Puerto Rico. And so before we start, I just wanted to let folks know that the call will be recorded and we will make the call and the materials available at probono.net/LHI, and this is the link. All of this will be posted and shared. And so if you want to come back and review it, or if you think it's a great webinar you want to share with your group, your practice, or other partners in the same Access to Justice community, you'll have access to the recording and the materials. So without more, let's get to what we're going to do today. As I said, very excited to have Ayuda Legal de Puerto Rico. They are a group that are doing an amazing job in the area of housing and recuperation from the hurricane, among other legal advocacy. It's not limited to that. And for me, observing their work and working with them on the online forums, what has been the most exciting thing is to see how the technology that they're using and bringing on, because they're working with Pro Bono Net on other partnerships, has been always centered around increasing access, improving their services, and an overall strategy, which is really the way forums can become extremely successful. And so without more, I am very pleased to leave you in good hands with Ariana Goudreau-Abert, who is the executive director, and David Rodriguez Andino, who is the tech lead and an advocate attorney who has done an amazing job because he's also the online form developer for the forms that we'll be focusing as part of the presentation. We're going to break for questions after they finish their presentation, but if people have things that they want to hear more about or whatever, put them in the chat. And we'll try to make this as interactive as we can. Everybody's on mute right now, but if you raise your hand or whatever, we can unmute you. So then after we get done, we're just gonna get into regular LHI updates and reminders, training opportunities, changes to the system, things like that. And then we'll close with sharing the topic for the next monthly call, which is gonna be exciting too. So I am going to stop and make, do you want me to make Ariana the presenter?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you control of the screen.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm gonna be showing my screen. First of all, and while we set this up, I wanted to start by saying how humbled we are to be part of this conversation. My name is Ariadna, and I'm the co-founder and the director of Ayuda Legal Puerto Rico. And I'm here with David Rodriguez Andino, who coordinates all of the legal tech initiatives in the organization. We have been working for the past 5 years in different legal education initiatives and legal support work directly with communities all around the island. We have been working very closely with Pro Bono Net since we started as the coordinators of the statewide website. So for us, having this chance to present our advocacy campaign, some of the work we have been doing around disaster recovery 2 years after 2 years after Hurricane Maria, and on the verge of the peak season of hurricanes once again, is a great opportunity. So thank you for being out there. So we're going to be focusing this very short presentation around our advocacy campaign that's called Recuperación Justa, or Just Recovery. And the way that we have used technology, essentially ayudalegalpr.org, that is the statewide website, as a complement, as a way to integrate technology in a housing advocacy campaign. Recuperación Justa is a campaign that was the result of disaster legal aid that was done a day after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico in 2017. We started by taking all of the information that we already had in the statewide website, together with the collaborations that were made possible thanks to Pro Bono Net, that connected us through disaster legal aid with people that already did this work in Louisiana, in Texas, in New Jersey, and who, using legal tech, were able to mentor us and to develop capacity in Ayuda Legal and our volunteers so that we could amplify and replicate disaster legal aid work throughout communities. We started working with FEMA applications, everything that has to do with first response, and eventually, and because of the government lack of adequate responses, it developed into a broader recovery advocacy campaign. So when we're talking about Recuperación Justa, the campaign strategy that we're going to be mentioning today, we're talking about the people that 2 years after the disaster still claim two main rights. First, the right to participate in recovery related decisions. For example, people in the island have been unable to participate adequately of the way that federal funding is going to be spent. For example, these decisions have been solely made by the local Department of Housing and the federal Department of Housing, and the communities who know their needs better than anyone, their needs 2 years after the disaster, their needs that have to do with, for example, the fact that we still have 30,000 people living on the blue tarps, have been unable to influence the way that recovery decisions are being made. So the first call of this campaign is the right to participate, and the second one has to do with the right to stay. Through our legal work and legal education work, we have been able to identify that because of restrictions in the way that the local government has been designing the recovery process, possibly 200,000 families are at risk of being either denied assistance or being explicitly threatened with displacements. So the right to stay is the second part of this advocacy campaign that includes not only stakeholders in the island, like nonprofits and communities, but that also includes stakeholders abroad, like Latino Justice, Hispanic Federation, Open Society Foundations, and others. This is some very brief context that I'm gonna be showing us. I think that it's important, although David is going to be mentioning that part in the legal tech initiatives, how technology has helped us to translate very technical information not only in the legal realm but also in other realms like scientific flooding maps that directly affect the possibility of people living in their communities. So we have used, with the help of designers, obviously, that to, for example, portray the new flooding maps. Everything that's blue right now, it's considered a flood zone. Those are places historically inhabited by Black low-income communities, and those are places where people are being told that they cannot live there anymore. Another important map that we have been able to distribute is this map that basically pinpoints in red all of the municipalities where we have identified communities that the mayors have said need to be displaced. So this is part of also like complementing the legal information that we have put out there about CDBGDR funds, about recovery funds, with maps that can help people like identify with the legal information and move towards an advocacy campaign. And finally, this map that has to do with the opportunity zones, that in Puerto Rico, it's 98% of the terrain. So we have used all of these maps, and using the tools that we already have, like the digital platforms, like the mailing list, like the social media outreach, together with the community workshops, to give shape to those two rights that I mentioned at the beginning, the right to participate and the right to stay. What you're looking right now at in your screens is basically how the different goals look like, how would winning look like. And I wanted to stop really quickly in the first one, equitable access to recovery funds, and how individuals and communities are going to be able to access these fundings. This first goal is the same goal that we had when we started 2 years ago the campaign in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. And this goal and what we were able to win with FEMA, for example, developing a mechanism so that people with informal titles, nearly 77,000 people in Puerto Rico, could be able to apply for assistance for their houses, was made possible because we had a legal platform where we could put out the information about the sworn statement, where we were able afterwards to receive mentorship from other organizations abroad that already had wins, like pushing forward assistance for people without informal titles. And then we were able to win an advocacy fight against FEMA in order for them to adopt the document that we were proposing. And afterwards, like David is going to be explaining, how to make that document, how to make that tool ready and accessible for people like abroad. So the same goal that we had back then, now translated into other kinds of funds, is still one of the main objectives of this advocacy campaign. So I'm not going to stop a lot around these advocacy steps. Mostly, probably most of you have been part of some sort of advocacy campaign, but I wanted to stop on different things. Legal education is still a basis of the advocacy work that we do. We think that knowing your rights is power. And that means that because the people in Puerto Rico are being denied access to information, because laws are still not published, because the action plan that has to do with recovery is still so complicated, people is lacking the possibility to influence those plans and to actually have a shot about deciding if they are going to be able to stay in their communities. So when we're working with advocacy, we're still like focusing on legal education as a basis of everything else. But for me, it was important like to portray this strategic map of advocacy. And if any of you have questions, we can stop on this afterwards. But before David takes the stage, I wanted to stop that in the fact that while we're working in advocacy campaign, and I have been working in strategy for some years now, while we're working strategizing a huge win regarding public policy, there's people that still has immediate needs. While we're drafting a just recovery campaign, there's still people in Puerto Rico that every time that it rains, they get wet. There are still people in Puerto Rico. Yesterday, we were receiving phone calls about people that were asking for a blue tarp, because blue tarps, they have a lifetime of 30 days, and it's been 2 years, and we still have 20,000 people with blue tarps. So how do you react to those immediate needs? Parallel to the process of strategizing advocacy wins, if the people's time is always running out, because the immediate needs, the essential needs are very time sensitive. So that's why we think that while we're working in this broader campaign, it's important to still focus on legal education, but also in self-defense. You know, we want to prevent banks from foreclosing houses, but we do still realize that the person that receives a summon for a legal procedure about foreclosures, they need something now, and that something may be has to be some sort of self-defense capacity development. That's why we still like bet on process tools and participation toolkits, and the document assembly initiative that David is going to be speaking about is part of that effort.
Hey everyone, thanks again for having us. I'm David. So basically, I'm gonna be brief with my part since we don't have that much time. But as Ariadna was saying, technology is ingrained in everything that we do in Ayuda Legal Puerto Rico. We see it as the application of knowledge, and in that regard, then it permeates throughout every of our initiatives. So basically today we're going to be focusing on document automation, and I would like to let you know how we see tech combined with the efforts that Ariana was talking about. How do we implement tech into a community outreach effort, a bottoms-up approach? when tech by itself can be seen as something that comes from the top-down approach. So the first thing that we need to realize, and the first thing that we do, is that we can recognize that tech is not the solution. Tech by itself is not the solution, and that may sound strange coming from me, which I'm the tech lead in Ayuda Legal Puerto Rico, but I think it's very healthy to see tech as not the solution. We see it as a pretext to problematize. What do we mean by problematize? What we mean is the exercise of seeking the answer to the who, the what, the why of the issues that affect us daily and the issues that we're trying to tackle in the organization. Although we can recognize that tech by itself is not the solution, we also recognize that tech is usually perceived as the solution. So we take advantage of that common line of thought or misconception that tech will solve everything. We take advantage of that too, as a pretext, as I said before, to problematize the issue. We take the issue and we study its essential components, and that enables us to think differently, how we can make it better, how we can fix whatever it is that is affecting us. So let me explain with a concrete example of one of the forms that we're using. As Arena was saying, we had this issue with FEMA. They basically were denying assistance to thousands of families and individuals here in the island because of the lack of a formal title. So when you problematize that issue, you see that a lot of things become like essential components of that, which is federal law, the local civil code, state law, public policy, history of Puerto Rico, the politics in the island. There are many, many, many issues that end with people not receiving the benefit that they have a right to. So it is hard to get people rally up and to get people to follow us in a campaign that involves all of those issues at the same time. So what do we do? How do we get people riled up? How do we do an effective call to action? Then we have to narrow it down. We have to see how we can offer an alternative to the issue that's affecting people. And that in this case, it is the sworn statement that Ariadna mentioned before. We got FEMA to accept a sworn statement as an alternative proof of ownership, and that would get people to get access to the funds. At the same time, we make that sworn statement, not only we have a physical copy of it, which is the copy that most people will be using here in the island, but we also have a automated copy of it, which is using for Puerto Rico, like very advanced technology. And it sounds like very enticing for people to know that, hey, you can fill up this document from the comfort of your house. You don't need a computer per se. You can use your mobile phone. You can access it anywhere, and that gets people to listen to you, and that gets us to allow tech to unify not only the legal service providers, NGOs, but also the community to develop strategies around this new tool, what they see as a new tool that could, as I said before, has the conception of hey, this is going to solve everything. So that as a pretext to really come up with a real and accessible solution to everyone can really make the difference. So for us, tech is a pretext to problematize and then to unify and generate involvement. As I was saying, then it is a tool to allow us to advocate better, to have a clearer call to action, really narrowed down into something that's tangible, that's concrete. It allows us to convey hope, but in a realistic manner, because you will never hear us say, hey, this is gonna fix everything. So, and it also allows us to offer an alternative and not only offer a critique to the current system, but come up with an alternative to what's currently affecting us. And that's what we're trying to do with the automated documents at the moment. And they've come up as a response to our other campaigns. That's why our first 3 forms that we launched were the FEMA sworn statement form, the an answer to eviction complaint, and declaration of heirship, which here in Puerto Rico is a document that you need when a relative of you when you're about to ¿cómo se dice inherit sorry, to inherit something, you need that document here in Puerto Rico in order to be able to prove to the court that you are an heir to that person that died. So that all is very involved with the other campaigns and what's happening currently in the island, and it allowed us to as I said, state a clearer call to action and get people to work together towards a common goal and find alternatives to the things that are affecting us at the moment. And it is a very cost-effective way to do that too. Okay. So, any questions?
And folks, feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask questions. I can unmute you or put them on the chat. Carolyn, I see you have your hand raised, so I'm going to unmute you. Carolyn?
Hi, Carolina from Mass Legal Help in Massachusetts. I think you two did a presentation at the TIG conference a couple of years ago, right after the hurricane. Is that right? Yeah. And I think at the time, nobody had any internet anywhere. And I was really impressed because you went all over the country doing like 40 presentations a week all over the place. You know, doing your presentations live. So I'm interested, it sounds as if some people are now have some internet access that you can, and also I guess with their phones. So there's quite a bit more internet connection now than there was 2 years ago or whenever that was. Did you not hear me?
Yeah, I think that a lot has changed, but I think that the lessons that we learned are still there. You know, like how to use technology in a more effective way. For example, we have been using technology, changing without saying this out loud necessarily. Changing the audience. We are very aware 2 years after the hurricane that when you develop a website or when you develop a digital platform or even these new forms, we are not serving the poorest of the poorest of the poorest.
Right.
We're serving some sort of a group of people that maybe falls through the gaps of access to justice, whatever that may be, but there are still not the people with the hugest unmet needs. So we're currently using technology as a way, as we did before during the hurricane, you know, as a way to attract pro bono attorneys, as a way to attract, you know, like influence, collaborations, but knowing that we still have to do a lot more than just technology. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, it's also, and so you're reaching to do this, essentially you're enabling advocates or lay advocates so that they can reach the poorest of the poor. So somebody know, I may be living under a blue tarp, but there's a worker that comes through my village every day and they can help me fill out the form, that kind of thing. They have the phone or whatever. Is that part of it as well?
That may be part of it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about the collaboration, I would be interested in hearing, like, in the creation of the forms, right? Because you created Spanish forms, which we don't have a lot of that type of content in LHI. Who became a true partner in helping you one, identify the forms, prioritize the forms, but also give you feedback so that when you release the form, you knew that you're setting out forms that were something that had never been seen in Puerto Rico because it was not a concept before you guys did it, but also knowing that it would be quality and that it would have an impact. Who became your partners in the process?
Well, we did focus testing with the forms, and our usual allies like the University of Puerto Rico, the other legal organizations that provide services that have always collaborated with us. They help us like have a good group for the focus testing of the forms, and yeah, that's basically it. We did a lot of extensive focus groups before launching. And we still have a few things that could be made better in terms of language, since some things still appear in English and not in Spanish completely. But there's a platform, more like a platform thing, but in practice, that it didn't affect that much.
And what sometimes happens is that when people see the technology, see the forms, then people say, "Hey, can we have? Are you getting requests to create new forms from other partners or others in the nonprofit space?"
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Are you getting requests from others when they see the technology and they try it out and they see the impact that it can have? Are you getting requests from other nonprofits or
yeah, definitely. Maybe not the kind of request that I would like, because what they want me to do is like, hey, oh, so you make web pages. Can you revamp my whole website and help us with our legal tech on our organization? So,
yeah. But beside that, we have had, for example, and that's something that we adopted. We had a request to make an automated form that had to do with domestic violence. October is of international awareness about this kind of gender violence, and we're going to be making something special for that date. And at the same time, we're going to be training people from nonprofits who work with domestic violence about how to fill this form.
Okay. Yeah, and we're going to be releasing a safety planning tool with another project that we're working on. So I'll be happy to share that. You know, like I think it's the first automated safety planning tool that's going to be done with CLJ, and hopefully we'll be releasing it in October. There'll be a webinar, so hopefully people will join to see how they can benefit from that. But I think that we wanted to hear a little bit. I think Liz had asked if you could talk a little bit about outreach strategies that you're using that are working with the forums. Anything that you're doing that you find to be effective for the target community or the partners?
Right now, I'm seeing the question, and we really launched the forums like in February, March of this year, and we're now doing outreach to different organizations, including the judicial branch, to do presentations, to hold like training and webinars with different sorts of people that have a direct access or provide direct service to the peoples that we're trying to really help with the forms. So we don't have like an answer right now as to which of those strategies had the better outcome. Maybe in a few months we'll be able to tell, but we're currently trying out different strategies, and we'll have the data later on to let you know which ones were the most successful.
Yeah, we strongly rely on social media for a lot of things, and we have had different sessions speaking about the best strategy to make this pitch in social media about the forms. One of the things that we have discarded is, for example, using arguments like, if you want to save $600 and that may be the cost of a lawyer doing this work or this form to you, you can use this platform instead. And the reason is that we, one of our goals is to develop a strong pro bono culture, and we want to assure lawyers that So we don't want to blame lawyers of the access to justice gaps. Many of them could be blamed, but that's not the reality that we want. We have been challenged by what's the correct language, also on the basis of ethics limitation. Like, you can't tell people that they can be by themselves lawyers preparing legal forms. And it's difficult, because the easiest way to explain them these forms is you can create your own legal document. But that sounds a lot like you can be a lawyer and create these documents for another person. So we have been working for that, and if anyone here has ideas or recommendations on what they have done, please feel free to share. Like the Facebook page. My mom follows us, and she's very happy when people like the page.
Yeah. And I posted the Facebook page there because I follow them on Facebook to listen and to learn, and I find that there's a couple legal aid groups that do this really well, and I put Ayuda Legal at a level of mastery that I have not seen more than 10. So they're very high in my estimation from how I see they're combining in-person activities with social media, with community organizing. So it has many dimensions, and like that slide that you guys have that I absolutely love, that has the different columns, the communications, information, all of that. I think that the web page really reflects that analysis, and anyone that's in legal aid or working with self-represented litigants or doing this kind of work, you can like the page and follow it, and you're going to see, you may get ideas of what you can do with already existing resources or even existing activities and commitments that you're already doing, how to get them out and kind of bring them up to the people, because the reality is that most people expect to find things, announcements and opportunities like this on Facebook, not just from nonprofits, but also from the government.
And this is Liz Keith with Pro Bono Net, and thank you, Ariadna and David, for that context and additional information about your outreach strategies. And I would just echo what Claudia said. I think Ayuda Legal's Facebook page is one of the reasons I'm still on Facebook these days, and go on there. It's really terrific the way that Ayuda Legal is engaging its community through that medium. And I really notice in particular, even though I only speak about 20 words of Spanish and I'm often using sort of just seeing the automated translation versions, that I think, David, what you said in the last slide about how you have been using technology and the online resources that you've created as a vehicle to help convey to people a positive and hopeful message about steps they can take to protect their rights, or for people who were profoundly impacted by Hurricane Maria, even though they had no control over that event, they can influence what comes next in their communities and their lives. And I think the way that you have communicated that positive, hopeful, engaging message comes through in a very strong way. And it's also, it's nice to see how your community and stakeholders engage and respond to that on social media as well.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
And thank you for being amazing always.
Well, thank you for joining us and sharing this with us. I'm hoping it will inspire some folks. And on the use, I would just comment that when David let me know that his forms are up, like I made a point of checking volume about a quarter, 3 months afterwards, and I was very impressed, particularly since there's an analogy and it's a new technology. I was very impressed with the uptake of the forms, because at that point they were not doing outreach. So I think that we can say that if you really think about forms and technology in a culturally relevant context, which is more than just language, is really understanding how to present the information. If you look at the landing page for the forms, they're really beautifully done, a lot of white space, very simple language, plain language. all of that will inure to the benefit of the people that you're trying to create the forms for. So we'll keep sharing about the great work that Ayuda Legal will continue doing, because I'm sure they will keep innovating. So just very thankful that you took the time when you are so busy and doing so much for the community.
No, Claudia, gracias. Thank you
No, de nada.
so much. Thank you for your support siempre.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Claudia and Liz. Thank you both very much.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for having us.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll transition. I'm just gonna go through regular LHI announcements and things like that. And if anybody else wants to make a comment or a question, feel free. Make myself, okay, here we go. Okay. So I hope folks can see my screen. So now we're back to LHI LawHelp Interactive updates and announcements. Just a reminder that now you can get your own reports. You don't have to wait for me or Miranda to pull them for you. So here is the link, and encourage people to try it out. And we have new types of data that we're sharing. So if folks have questions about how to interpret the data, you can also reach out to us. We hope that you can use this to promote your work, not only with your funders, but also with other potential collaborators, and so lead to better integration of services across people working with the same communities, etc. So that's that. The other thing is that I don't know how many of you seen the new NLADA legalaidresources.org page. It's a page that NLADA created with funding from a foundation, and it's focusing on non-LSC specific resources. And a lot of these, if you check them out, there's a lot of amazing requests for calls for proposals from multiple federal funding streams like DHHA, SAMHSA, Veterans Affairs, etc., etc. And they are on a federal cycle, so it could be that the fall cycle is wrapping up. But there's generally, with federal funding, there's fall and then there's February. Generally, these are multi-million dollar, hundreds of millions sometimes, appropriations. And for the ones that they're posting, legal aid can be either a partner or a lead. So if anybody is interested in looking at those specific funding streams and wants to think or brainstorm what role technology can play, and what strategies you can create around technology, feel free to reach out to me or Miranda or anybody at Pro Bono Net, because this page is really well done, and something that I think could open a whole new bunch of revenue sources, particularly to build strategic technology like we've heard in this call. That's that. The other thing is that I don't know if the community remembers that we have been working and trying to bring everything away for developers in particular, to create a developer area where you can actually access developer specific resources. And this is what's available for the LHI community, and it's found on the, if you look at LawHelp Interactive, if you click at the help button at the very bottom, that's where you come. And so we now have single sign-on, which means that if you're an LHI developer, you have access to LHI as a developer, you can now request single sign-on to this place. And here we have two places. We have a community forum where we're gonna put this all very detailed in instructions in our next newsletter, and probably send a guide or something via email so you all can use this. But we're creating a community where we're hoping you will start requesting and giving us feedback, kind of create a conversation that's not in the email list, or people can suggest new posts. The recordings are here. If there's topics for training, you can do that. So this is one aspect of it that I'm really excited, because hopefully it's a way to stay closer connected for all of us that are working on this frequently. And then we have an area where we have taken everything that used to be in the probono.net page that was specific for developers, and we are moving it all here. That way people will be able to access this as they join LHI, and they will have access, and hopefully it will simplify having to go to another web page and all of that. So with the help of Bart and Mark, Rafael, Miranda, and me, we've collated and boiled down to an essential developer community materials, and they're all here. So we will be sharing a little bit more of this in a future newsletter article with details and stuff. But I wanted to make sure that you all know that it's available, and if you want to start checking it out, you can start checking it out now, because the functionality is available. So let me get back to my slides. The other thing is that we're going to be doing some updates, and we've been talking about this, and finally finish the list of terms that we're going to change. In an effort to make the hot docs interviews a little bit easier to understand for the lay user, we're going to be changing a lot of the navigation and some of the very basic instructions in the hot docs interview only. So only the ones that are using that interface will be affected. These will hopefully go live and in staging in mid-September, and we're gonna leave it up there so people can give us feedback, and we hope to finalize by October. So I pulled some of the examples of the things that we're going to change to hopefully make it a little bit easier for the end user who's not a hot docs maven. And so, for example, hot docs interview is going to become about. Resource page is going to become help. Hide the resource page is going to be hide help. Show the resource page is going to be show help. The last is going to become last page. We're getting rid of the term dialogue because that who knows what a dialogue is, and we're going to be putting terms that we think are easier to understand, and that everything has been reviewed by Transcend. So we're aiming to make it as plain language as possible. So first dialogue, return to start of interview. Next dialogue, go forward. And there's going to be more like that. This is not an inclusive list, but be on the lookout. And if anybody wants to know exactly what terms are changing, or has concerns because you may have taken screens and put those in instructions, or be using them to write, your staging page and things like that, I'm happy to give you all of this ahead of time. And if there are things that we're doing that, even though they're in plain language and we've reviewed them a lot, not just internally, but with partners, if there's still things that you think, hey, this language is not going to work out, it's counterintuitive, feel free to let us know. Reach out to me because I'm leading this. And once we deploy it, you can let us know. And so that before that it goes live for good in production in October, we can consider making changes. The idea here is to make the navigation of the hot docs interviews a little bit easier for the end user and for those that are not using it every day. So, training opportunities. We have opened the training. We're going to redo the remote series where you can do it from your office. It's going to be 8 weeks of an inverted webinar type classroom experience. You'll watch a video and then you will come and share on homework with our excellent trainers. It's going to start on 9/11 and it ends in October, at the end of October. And it's open now. Everybody that participates will need to have A to J author install hot docs. Everybody that registers, I will send an email confirming enrollment and giving them instructions. But those of you who need a hot docs license now, and you're a legal nonprofit 501c3, you can start right now trying to obtain, if you don't have it, the terms for a discounted hot docs license to author. So, but everybody that signs up will get detailed instructions. I just want to make sure that people know that this is something they're going to have to do, and the best contact for that. I'm going to see if we have, or I don't know if any of the other panelists see any other questions on the chat or discussion. Okay, just a reminder from our Cali friends that you don't install A2J Author, but you still need to register. And all of that will be in the instructions for the training. Any other things that you want us to think about or consider for next calls, etc., or feedback?
Hey, Claudia, this is Mark. I just wanted to mention that our next call in September is going to focus on how we can have these kind of technologies promoted by law school courses. So we have a number of different law schools that are building applications by students to improve access to justice using A2J, hot docs, etc. And that, I think, is on the 24th of September.
Yes, yes. And so Mark has lined up, you have 2 or 3 universities, right? I know that you have Suffolk, Kent Law,
we got a couple.
He has, yeah, so we'll have professors that are teaching using technology to teach law students. And then the call will have 2 parts. The other part is that Kansas Legal Services will be presenting with LawDroid on the live chat and chat bot that are now inserted inside their expungement A2J author interview through LHI. So we have talked about this before, but we're gonna do a demo, and they're going to share a little bit about how that's impacting the use of the expungement form, the ability to do remote expungement clinics, and what they're seeing in terms of people coming in for intake, applying for online intake to get more counsel and advice on complicated expungement cases, and just overall whether having those tools on a complex area of law like expungement is having an impact in people completing the form and feeling more supported even when there's not a human, because we have a chatbot, which is very cool. So we'll cover those 2 topics in the next call. And last but not least, in October, we will be talking about new ABA best practices standards for document assembly providers. So that's going to be the call of October. And we're going to be sharing our impressions on that best practices that just got released, I believe, on August 12th. The ABA ratified the standard, is guiding principles, and we'll be talking about that, and then hopefully sharing, these are the things that LHI is covering or will do, is already covering from a platform point of view, and then these are the things that owners of forums may want to think about if they want to come up to meet the standards, or maybe they want to see, okay, these are models or what other states have already been doing that could be replicated, so that people can benefit from the network effect of being part of the LHI community with that. So those are the next 2 calls, and wondering if anybody has any questions before we end. Oh, okay. Okay, well, we don't need to belabor things. We're all busy, but reach out and sign up for the training if you want to join. We are not going to put limits on registration, but want to make sure that everybody is ready to go when we start on the 11th. And yeah, check out the resources I shared on funding, and let me know if you want to have the specific terms of words that we're going to be changing, in case you want to do some thinking about anything that you may have borrowed from hot docs interviews. And thank you, everyone, and particularly thank you to Ariana and David for joining us and showing how they're doing strategy and technology and how they're thinking about it, which is a very good way and very well thought out, and hopefully something that others can emulate.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.